Hello, everybody.
Hey, hey, hey.
I just had to make sure that was working. Yeah, when I asked you to hold it a sec because it said showtime on StreamYard, I'm going, well, okay, I better, I better, yeah, I better get going here. So, hello, everybody. So, Rick and I are here. We're just gonna wait a few minutes, give some other people see if more of our panelists will be gracious show up for us. Yeah, so Rick was telling me something very interesting. Um,
Yeah, and that was that a friend. I was on a retreat this weekend. A friend of mine, was getting rid of a bunch of his comics. So I got like 400 or 500 new comics. I haven't counted them, so I'm not exactly sure. Might be less. I'm not sure. But the one comic that we read a few weeks ago, Marvel Comics #1.
mhm.
I got a bit of a reprint of that. I think it just has the Namor story and the Human Torch story in it.
Oh. The Namor story, the one where you outright called him a villain.
Yeah.
Actually, that was a very interesting discovery for both of us. And, well, but as I even pointed out, what one world's villain is another's hero.
Yeah, he may have been a hero, quote unquote, to his people, but to anybody reading the comic, he was a villain.
Yeah. Well,
In my opinion,
yeah.
anyways.
Well, his methodology would probably make him more of a villain, but the argument could be put that his people felt they had the right to react that way, considering that's the way they were being treated. So you know
Mm.
um, so Rick, as always, of course, if you want to, feel free to share your links in the YouTube chat. You want to, again, we'll probably do formal intros. When it,
Once we get a couple more people.
right. I think my phone just buzzed. Give me a sec. I'll be right back. Let me entertain.
Okie dokie, Smokey. So, let's see. Nobody in the chat, and just me here. Yeah. Yeah, I got a whole, like I said. Here, let me put on a shirt, and I might show off some of these. Okay, just give me a second, folks. Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm back now. Yeah. So I know Rick just said he was going to offer to show off some of his comics. So we'll.
Uh, Let me change my, bring up my camera. Okay, so now you can all see my ugly mug. Yeah, some of a bunch of super DC and Marvel, Superman Action Comics 32, Enemy of the State, Superman Doomed.
Hey, RJ.
Hey
Hey
there.
RJ,
Rick is showing us some of the comic books that came in over the weekend for him.
Yeah.
Good showing off of collection stuff.
Yeah, I just got them. A friend of mine was getting rid of a bunch of his Dragon Age. Obviously, not going to show them all because I got like I figure minimum 300. Smallville Lantern, season 11 continued.
I kind of like the Smallville seasons in the comics, continuing on that whole television show dynamic with the characters that they established.
Some
Well, it's funny that
Spider-Man.
they've done that a lot over the years with TV series, where they've like sat there and just where they would sometimes make a TV show and then do a comic adaptation of the show.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean tons of them in the 50s for sure, in the 60s.
Yeah.
Heck, even the 70s, there was Welcome Back Cotter comics.
Yeah.
Smallville was the first one
Dark
that was actually
Shadows
like
had
continuing the show, though.
Dark Shadows had a comic book too.
Oh yeah,
It's based on the 1960s cult classic.
Some Valiant comics I got in the mix. The Delinquents, Exo Man of War, uh, Armor Hunter, Harbinger. I obviously don't want to show.
That does kind of remind me of a story that I did the other day because they were talking about the Faith series. How I guess that was one of the only series in Valiant that actually survived. That's still possibly still going right now. Or they're trying to do I think a TV or a movie adaptation of that comic.
yeah.
Jupiter's Legacy 2, issue 2.
Now that was a good Netflix series, but it just didn't last.
What, Faith?
No, Jupiter's Legacy.
Bug.
Bug, like the Micronaut bug.
I don't
Or
think so. I think this is from young adults. I think it's DC. The Adventures of Forager Bug.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's Fourth World.
Like I said, Exo Man of War.
Nice.
I just grab a whole bunch and go quick with the one called Northgard. Actually, I think I have these in a collection that I'm going to be going through in a few weeks. Well, I'm not sure how long on my whatchamacallit.
So he was just cleaning house and said, "Hey, want to buy some comics?" And...
No, he gave them to me.
Oh, dude, best price ever.
Yeah, he was gonna take them to a shop and give them or try and sell them. He had a bunch that he ended up keeping. He went through them, to see which ones he wanted to keep. He kept Dark Knight 3. The Frank Miller thing. He kept some Astro City ones and a few others.
He did you a favor keeping the Dark Knight 3.
I just realized something when I sent out the link when I sent out the invites earlier. I forgot to send one to Tommy.
Yeah.
X-Men Resurrection. X-Men Gold #1. Yeah.
This is another Harbinger from Valent. 2014 calendar. Marvel Now.
Marvel Then.
Unity by
Oh,
Valiant.
I kind of like Unity. That was like their Crisis. Like everybody came together in one adventure.
Yeah. So there is that box, and then there's one underneath there, all full of comics. I'm not sure how well. I could be here all night showing them off. I don't want to.
Well, no, that's okay. Because Rick, I'm trying to take care of a couple things here too. So
Yeah.
Keep showing comics.
Satellite Sam. I just realized what that was.
Don't show the naughty ones.
The butt. It's a butt cheek. Omega Men. Well, I guess that's by DC too as well.
Yeah, that was a good series. That was a spin-off out of Green Lantern when Perez was on Lantern. So naturally, it crossed over with the new Teen Titans a lot.
I got some Earth 2 ones. The more recent Earth 2 stuff.
Yeah, the series after the New 52.
Yeah. Previews from I don't know when. More Action Comics. Some Rebirth stuff. Some Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, I'm disappointed with Amazing Spider-Man lately. I'm glad I'm not a regular reader. The one that came out this week, he's talking to Black Cat about Mary Jane and how he's always seen Mary Jane like a sister.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I married my sister for 50 years.
Yeah. Well, he hadn't been married to her 50 years. My God, I remember the marriage and it hadn't been that long ago. Has it? No, I'm only 55, so I wasn't. They didn't get married when I was 5, but yeah, he.
Well, in the comics, they've been married last time.
Didn't Mary Jane get introduced like in the 80s or something like that?
No, she got introduced in the 60s, but they didn't get married until the late 80s.
Huh.
The Sovereigns featuring Turok.
Now I've got to look it up.
Let's see.
Rick going sleeveless then.
Yeah. Captain America.
Wow, 87. Up until 2007. And then One More Day happened and they were suddenly never married again.
Yeah, I hate One More Day.
Everybody
Invincible. Issue 111.
Dang, it has been nearly 40 years that they've been married. Crap.
King Tiger.
That's a Dark Horse. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually,
not to be confused with Tiger King. Completely different story.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how you point that out, RJ. Speaking of anniversaries and birthdays, as it were, do you know what happened 60 years ago this past Wednesday, the 22nd?
I have no clue.
The Flintstones episode, The Blessed Event, premiered 60 years ago this past Wednesday.
Pebbles is 60.
Yep. Pebbles is 60 years old.
Yep. One of these days, they're going to have to go back and figure out who Bam Bam's real parents are.
Yeah, because didn't they? Oh, yeah, because they adopted him, didn't they? They didn't.
He was left on their doorstep.
The payback.
Bam, 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 bam.
Yeah, and he was super strong. So that kid's alien.
Paybacks. A Man of War, another Man of War. Secret Origins.
Oh, I love the Secret Origins ones.
This got Batman on the cover. Batman, Aquaman, and Starfire. Vertigo.
Yeah, YouTube's doing it to me again.
Uh-oh.
Well, that thing where they basically are real slow on
Yeah.
the feed. They had, prior to this year, I never had an issue with that. The feed on YouTube was always in sync with StreamYard, but this year it seems like from time to time it'll start to slow down for some reason.
I've never seen it in sync with StreamYard. It's always had an 8-second delay.
Well, yeah, okay. Okay. Maybe there's that, but not the delay I'm talking about. It's like I've had to like sit there and take the red, click on the red thing and move it all the way to the end a couple times already.
Well, then that's more just your stream not keeping time with, what we're doing. It's for
I've
whatever
never
reason
had that
it's
problem
buffering.
before this year. I never had that problem. Well, actually, I guess before December, I guess I never had that problem.
Yeah. That could be YouTube. It could be you. It could be who knows what. A spirit
Hmm.
comic. Just let me know if you want me to stop, Mike.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's content, so. Well, actually, I do want to take a break for a moment because we do have 3 people here now. So I want to go around the horn here and give everybody a chance to introduce themselves and talk about, basically talk about what they do, share any links in the chat if you'd like, and yeah, and talk about your project, your channel, what have you. So, Rick, we'll start with you since you're in the 2 spot there.
As you said, I'm Rick Piper of, as my thing says, Cross Comics. I create comic books, Christian comic books, and I do some video content of just chilling and drawing on my stream, and I put up shorts for various other things that I'm doing. So I guess that's about it. Oh, I do have a project on right now on Indiegogo. It's probably going to be down in the next week or so because I will probably be getting my comics printed soon.
Okay.
So, and there's my link to the Indiegogo project in the chat.
All right. Just not showing up on StreamYard here yet, but I did go over and see it that it did show up on YouTube there. The video though is just not it's lagging. All right. Anything else there, Rick?
No.
And I think you did already mention your Tuesday night show, right? There it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll highlight that. So if you guys want to check out Rick's and Rick, feel free to share the link to your channel too. Don't
Yeah. I
so
don't want to spam. Not that it would matter, but I don't really want to spam the chat with all my links.
that's right. Well, I wouldn't mind at this point, Rick.
Yeah.
Because the more action there is, the more YouTube will acknowledge that there are people actually here.
Yeah.
We're like the little who's on a speck on Horton's clover flower. We are here.
Yeah.
We are here. We are here.
Anyways, okay. Well, if Rick's done, then RJ, you're up.
I am RJ Carter. I do not make comics, but I do read a lot of them, and I ship out several of them every month. More all the time. And you can find us at criticalblast.com, at Critical Blast on Twitter, at Critical Blast on YouTube, and at Critical Blast on Facebook.
And what do you do on your YouTube channel?
Not a whole bunch, but but we do interview creators. We'll review comic books. We'll occasionally do parody songs and puppet shows. You never know who or what is going to show up there.
All right. And if you want to share the link to your site and or your channel in the chat, feel free to do so. And that way, And of course, if you guys haven't already, if you guys can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people in here, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah.
Let me see now here. Okay. Well, anyways, well, I was hoping Mighty Geek Studios would be here by now, so that he could share his experiences from Friday. RJ, you were there for the Batman story. We were talking about that earlier today. Would you like to share? Because would you like to share with Rick and with any potential rewatchers? What you were sharing with me earlier about
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I mean, I tuned in because I always like to tune in for the comic historical retrospective, and it was happening to hit one of my favorite series, which was the original Detective Comics. And I must have read this in like an anthology compilation of something, because I thought for sure that was like the first Batman story, but it was not. It was it was at least the third or fourth one, because it was the Mad Monk.
Fourth. Yeah.
I was the Mad Monk taking control of Julie Madison and hypnotic control, not just hypnotic control, but like I want to say he may actually be the first really super powered villain that Batman went up against, because he was able to reach out telepathically across distance and call her with his mind, like a vampire would.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that even Terry and I noted to Terry, and we were talking a little bit about how throughout the story they were kind of confusing the idea of vampires and werewolves. And I had noted that because I had read that in some of the notes prior to the show, when I was prepping for the show earlier in the day, that they had talked about how in the story they kind of seemed to be a little bit confused on the differences between vampires and werewolves, because they kept kind of confusing the characteristics of the two. So that was kind of interesting.
Well, that also could be because back then the lores for both of them weren't quite as strong as they are today, and they
As
might have
well
had
known, you
some
mean?
more.
The
Yeah,
lores may not have been as well known.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
yeah, they
plus
didn't have
there's been a
internet
lot
back
more.
then.
Yeah, plus a lot more of lore has been created since then for vampires and for werewolves. So the lore that we have today wouldn't have been the same back then, and they might have had a lot of the same characteristics back then, where they've sort of diverged a little,
Mm-hmm.
having less, I think.
Yeah, and of course, one of the things that I would note, and this is before, this was long before they decided to make Bat a hero who wouldn't kill, but Batman in his early days there, would kill quite a bit.
Oh yeah, a fitting end for his kind.
Yeah, that was the line. That was actually a line from the very first story we were talking about. The very first story was a story in which, and I can't remember the gangster's actual name, but where he was dealing with a gangster who fell into a vat of chemicals at Ace Chemicals. Not to be confused with Joker, mind you. That's not who it was. It was somebody else.
Well, maybe it is. Maybe that's where they got the idea.
It was definitely the Joker idea was definitely derivative of that.
Anyways, for those of you, here's RG's YouTube channel right here. If you want to go check that out. All right. So so basically, unfortunately, because I was under the weather, I was unfortunately only able to get through two stories. So we got through the Batman and the Tex Thompson story. I was, obviously, I was hoping to get through the 5 stories like I'd been getting through in the DC and late, with the 2 main ones, and then of course some of the add-ons like, Sandman, Hop Harrigan, and and squibbly. Of course, I couldn't because my symptoms kept acting up. But anyways, I did the best I could. We actually did have some good conversations going on at times too. Woody and Tim were both, adding to the conversations during the chat. So, um, yeah. And it's kind of funny. I don't know if you stuck around for the Tex Thompson story or not, RJ, but that was another story in which supposedly one character had another under hypnosis.
It's a commonly used trope in comics. That was Alfred Stryker.
Alfred Stryker, yeah.
Who was the mobster killed in issue 1 or issue 27, first appearance.
Yeah, I can remember. An A kept coming to mind, but I couldn't think of why. I just couldn't.
Yeah, and it's interesting that his first name is actually the name of Alfred's of the butler, who wasn't introduced for a while yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they must have liked the name Alfred.
Yeah, well, that was still at the point when, and I know that Terry made the point, that it was good that that Bill Finger finally started getting his credits for that in the 2000s, But yeah, so let's see. And I did mention, of course, Pebbles turned 60 this last
Wednesday.
Last Wednesday, so that was pretty interesting to see that. I kind of knew that was coming because also in 1963 they earlier, like in January, is when they had the episode where Wilma, not Velma, I don't know why I said that. Well, Wilma had announced she was pregnant, so
and it only took her 2 months to have the kid.
Well, you have to understand too.
I'm joking.
I'm not sure if the show was done weekly or if it was done daily at that point when it was originally broadcast. If it was done, okay, so
I think it was done weekly.
But Woody. Pebbles turned 60 this past Wednesday. Hello, Woody. Woody's here. So yay, we got some more people here.
Hey, Woody. What's up?
Yeah, so.
Show anything else to discuss?
Well, I guess since RJ's here, I can ask him if he can give us any dirt on, because I do know that it has, because I reported on this, I think a couple weeks ago, that I guess Mike Barron is going forward with his lawsuit against Daily Cost.
And that's all I know. That's all I know. Yep.
She was
there's more to be written.
Yeah.
Because that's not all she wrote yet.
Yeah. And then, of course, I was talking to RJ earlier too. That we about a couple of interesting people getting into the indie comic scene. One, of course, is I think it's Camrus Johnson, who is one of the stars of Batwoman, played Lucius Fox Batwing on there.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week on here.
Okay. Yeah, I was talking to RJ about it too. But there was another. Let me see if I can find.
Yeah, they brought Batwoman back on the Flash series this season, so she's the big bad.
Well, at least she's a bad guy.
She's a version of the big bad. Basically, almost every season since the beginning, the big bad has always been another speedster, because they lost their creativity after the first season. But this season they've decided to plumb the depths of DC's newer series, Metal, Dark Knight's Metal, in which there was a a negative multiverse version of Batman where he took Barry's speed and became the Red Death. So now
So
we
they're
got the Red
doing it with
Death.
Batwoman instead of
They're
Batman?
doing it with Batwoman. Yes.
Oh God.
And Batwoman, Ryan, whatever her name is, has disappeared. So they don't, Gotham doesn't know where Batwoman is. Meanwhile, Red Death is here, and it is Batwoman. They wouldn't even go Bruce Wayne for this.
Oh, bad, and worse.
Do you know how much money DC could make if they would just say, okay, screw it, a Batman television series for Netflix or CW or whatever?
A good one too.
Yeah, a good one. They could go long form storytelling with Batman in something like Netflix, and you could have like the Dark Halloween done right.
Yeah, because they have, I think, in recent years, they tried it with Gotham, which was
Okay, so it was further back than I thought. It was back on the 17th. That let's see. So, RJ, you want to read that since that's you?
I just responding to Woody said that he said Pebbles was a cutie, and I said especially as a teenager, yabba dabba doozy.
Yep.
She was voiced by Sally Struthers.
Yeah.
Oh.
Who also portrayed Gloria Bunker on All in the Family,
and Charlene Sinclair on Dinosaurs.
Huh? Yeah. So.
And probably a bunch of other characters that we don't know off the top of our head. Oh, wasn't she the Flying Nut?
Wayne's. No. We got Wayne Klingman here.
Hey, Wayne.
Gotham
was great.
I thought it was good.
It had some dips in it, but for the overall part, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Maybe because it
was so. It wasn't awful, but I don't think it was the greatest thing out there that they could have done with Batman. They were trying to do Smallville with Batman, and I don't think it reached the heights of Smallville.
Well, because Bruce wasn't doing all the stuff. This was really the story of the city and how it got to be something that needed a Batman. It was the rise of Penguin and the origin of Riddler, and they just didn't quite want to commit to the origin of Joker, so they gave us 2 of them.
Yeah, well, I think the thing is too, with Batman having been away for 10 years, I think they started to, or maybe not so much Penguin, but Riddler, Catwoman and all that, a bunch, Poison Ivy. I think they really started a little too early on their origins of having them in there. But I don't know how you do Gotham without.
Yeah, I mean, Penguin can't rise to mob leadership the same year that Batman appears. That's something that takes time and a climb and everything else. So I'm okay with him taking 15 years to get to and less than that, actually. He got to the top of it in 8 years, and then he just kind of stayed there as a fixture. So, you look at the Boss Falcone, who was the head of the crime family for decades in Gotham.
Yeah.
I thought that Riddler's story was particularly tragic. Just,
they really made a joke of the Riddler, in my opinion.
Yeah, they did. And then what they did with Leslie Thompson, now that was just, we're throwing canon out the window here.
Yeah. And with Barbara Gordon.
Well, that was the Barbara Gordon Sr.
Yeah.
Because James did marry a Barbara, who would have become Gordon before he, hooked up with Sarah Essen. Boy, we're getting into deep Batman trivia here.
Yeah, that was way back when that was like, I think when he was, well, if I remember correctly, when Jim Gordon was originally introduced in the Golden Age, wasn't he already married to Barbara Gordon, or was that something more of a Silver Age?
Well,
I don't know if he got divorced or what, but
also it depends on which continuity you go with, because there was one time that um, James Gordon, Commissioner Gordon was actually Barbara Gordon's uncle, not her father.
Yeah, her parents had died and was left to him,
Yeah,
Mhm.
but at such a young age that she called him dad.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think that's how she was depicted on the '60s live action series too. That Barbara was Jim Gordon's niece, not his
No, she
daughter.
was definitely his daughter there. She
Oh,
called him
okay.
daddy
yeah,
every time.
Huh. Hmm.
So that was a little mixed, but they finally made her his biological daughter. Um, Back with Batman, right after Batman Year One, when James Jr. is born to his wife Barbara, and they have a daughter named Barbara after that.
yeah,
Hmm.
And then of course James Jr. is develops into being a psycho because he grows up in Gotham, and he was a pretty good serial killer. If you read Batman Black Mirror, this was during the time when Dick Grayson was Batman. That was a pretty interesting story. And then, of
yeah.
course, even after that,
I'm gonna have to step away from the camera for a moment, guys. I'll be right back.
Uh-huh.
and then it was in Batgirl's own book, um, when she had to basically do battle with her own brother, and it was a battle that ended in the death, uh, and it ended in the death of her brother in front of her dad. So her
Yeah,
dad has a manhunt out for Batgirl.
yeah, because he doesn't know she's Batgirl, and
Yeah, that goes back and forth too, because there's a lot of the time when he doesn't say it, but he knows.
yeah, he's a detective. He's the head of the detectives. How could he not know this?
Yeah,
That.
I mean there's a scene in Greg Rucka's uh, series where I think it was Bruce Wayne Fugitive, where Batman is talking to Jim Gordon, and it was an issue of trust came up, and Batman reaches up for his cowl and lifts it off, and when he lifts it off, Jim's got his head turned away and his eyes covered and said, "Don't put it back on. Don't take don't take away my plausible deniability. Do you think I haven't already figured this out? But if you tell me now, I have to say I know."
Yeah, there's plausible deniability when I don't know if I haven't seen your face. I can say I don't know who you are. You know,
Yeah,
I may think I know who you are, but the question is, do you know? No, I don't. Not.
yeah.
Do you think you know?
In fact, he figured it out in Batman Year One, but he didn't want to follow up on it because Batman had saved his son's life, so he just kind of like poo pooed the idea. But
Yeah,
Sarah is the one who pointed out all the. So it's like, hey, we just came from Bruce Wayne's place. He's got these skiing injuries that would match up pretty good with the things that happened to Batman when that building fell on him. Uh, Good way to hide stuff, hide
yeah,
injuries.
yeah. You know, your own private doctor. you know.
Yep, yep. That was another
Uh,
thing in the Silver Age. He had his own private doctor who knew his identity, and it wasn't Dr. Tompkins. There was a guy that would show up when Batman was like. This was before they started playing off of Alfred's uh, army medic skills too much.
yeah,
But
yeah.
there was a
Because there's
doctor who
some
would sworn to
injuries.
secrecy.
What
Yeah,
was that?
especially if he got like a poisoned or something and he needed an antidote or a surgery or something, they had to bring like a real doctor. And
Yeah. Well, antidotes he was starting to create himself.
yeah, well this is way before Batman became like Bat God. Uh where he was, doctor, lawyer, everything he needed to be.
Yeah.
Looking up the doctor now.
But and actually, I was watching a video the other day. I found out Alfred is actually dead in the comics now,
Yes. Yes. Um
and apparently Nightwing has more money than Bruce, and Bruce is broke basically,
the
or
Joker
close to
busted
broke.
Bruce financially. So he was like not a billionaire anymore. He's a millionaire. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know how much that impacts things anymore. I mean, Batman's all over the place right now. Right now, he's in another universe, in a parallel universe,
comics?
trying to figure things. Yeah, in the comics, he's in a parallel universe as Bruce Wayne in a world where Bruce Wayne never existed. So, but
Okay.
and
Interesting.
and Harvey Dent is some sort of Judge Dredd type character where he is the law and he's knocking down doors, asking people, "Are you sane or insane?" Because if you're insane, there's only one justice for the insane in Gotham. Um, and you
Yeah,
know,
and who's gonna answer that they're insane? Maybe an insane might, but most insane people don't realize that they're insane. So
yeah. Well, he'll judge you insane if he decides that he doesn't like your answer. And apparently he has the authority to do this, which is kind of weird. But there is somebody there that's been waiting for Bruce Wayne to show up, and it's strange. He's disappeared from our Earth. He's on this other one. DC is DC used to know how to do the multiple Earths. This was their forte. This was their strong column.
yeah.
Marvel's tried to do it, and with Marvel, it's like, well, if there's infinite, we can make anything happen because nothing matters anymore. We just pull millions of them in, and DC's like, millions of them. Why didn't we think of millions of them? So now there's millions of them. Truly, anything they want to
Oh.
happen can happen.
Well,
Now.
I think before Crisis of the Infinite Earths, there was.
There was, but you didn't visit all of them.
Yeah,
You like, you
but
visited
then then
most.
then you got down to one, and then it's like, oh, there's only 52. That doesn't really make any sense either. That
Oh,
there's
you
only
get down to
50.
one, and what happens when you get down to one? Oh crap, we can't do the Justice Society anymore because now it doesn't work. Because
Well,
because
they
now
put their
they're old.
yeah, they're old. Which I didn't mind that continuity where they were in the 19 World War II, we'll say,
Yeah,
and
but it was
you
the
know
night going into the 80s and the 90s, and we're like, wait a second, Jay Garrick's in his 80s. He's gonna have a heart attack if he runs that fast.
Well, according to some of the sources I was able to gather over the years, I think Jay Garrick's date of birth was technically April 3rd, 1918. So he would have been 70 years old in 1988.
Yeah, but now he's 103
Hmm.
or
Yeah.
106. I don't something like that.
Yeah, 100. Well, I guess if he was still alive today, he'd be chronologically he'd be 104. Well,
Yeah.
actually, no.
well,
100,
with at least Jay Garrick, they might have something to use to their thing. The whole speed thing is
Well,
slowing
they
down
gained
his
10
age.
years. They earned a 10-year lock when they locked the entire Justice Society in an alternate dimension, forever fighting Ragnarok. And then they got busted out of that and freed. So whatever time passed there, they were locked in age. But they screw up continuity. Okay, Flash. Flash is the biggest screw up in continuity ever. So let's put this into perspective. At the end of the Flash series, the Flash and Iris West go into the future where Iris was born. They have children. They have Don and Dawn Allen. And then the crisis happens and Barry runs back in time and of course loses his life, sacrificing it to save everyone from the crisis. Iris goes on, the twins grow up. Dawn has a child named Bart. Bart becomes Impulse. Impulse is a teenager. Let's at least say 30 years have passed here. So Iris is 30 years older. She's aged 30 years. Barry Allen comes back in time from the Speed Force, not 30 years older, but when Iris comes back, they are miraculously the same age.
It's crazy. Nobody can keep continuity. That's why I somehow I'm gonna try in my comics.
Well, look at what I'm trying to do. Right, I'm trying to do this. Just going forward, publishing, trying to, like for me, when I was just doing it, when I was just doing historical references for myself within the DC universe and all the companies they absorbed into them, I was trying to try to compress it and make it make sense as much as possible as well. Granted, I didn't get up to the points you guys have obviously talking about, but just trying to piece it all together, for if
Yeah.
I
What
should
what
if I should happen to have that faithful day where Axis shows up to open the portal and allow me to access to the DC universe. Right, RJ?
um
Absolutely.
and we're talking about like from 1985 and beyond, probably more into
Yeah.
the 90s to the early thousands we're getting to, with these storylines, just before they went and did this stupid new 52.
Yeah. Yeah, I think from what I understand, because I think they based a lot of the '90s and 2000s DCAU on post crisis, if I understand correctly. Um, and
Yeah.
from what I saw, that I thought a lot of the stuff in post crisis was actually pretty good in terms of how they basically compressed everything and made everything make a little more sense. Albeit, if you go back and Rick, you may not have as much extended knowledge like on DC that RJ and I do, but you go back and you see some of the early stories from like some of the earlier stories from Wonder Woman, and of course we know some of the bondage stuff that was in it. But
Yeah.
aside from that, her interactions with her little sidekick clique, the
Yeah.
Holiday Girls,
Holiday
that was
Girls.
pretty interesting
Yeah.
to read through and watch.
There was one time that I had a whole bunch of I think I do have most a part of it back, the bunch of early stuff for DC, and I was reading through it fairly systematically, and
Mhm.
I got into the 40s, mid 40s. I don't think I read one. I must have not got too far because I wasn't reading Wonder Woman on a consistent basis. So I don't know. Or maybe I just didn't have hers, because I got to try and get them. I think I got the files or somewhat, for to get them in via the high seas.
Yeah. Wonder Woman was
Yeah.
never my favorite character, and I never really understood how she kept being published, but I guess there was a readership for her.
Well, they kept changing her too, from what
Yeah.
you know, now they've sort of kept her the same. They changed her dress a little. Then
Well,
again,
they've
they've changed her.
taken her from being a baby sculpted out of clay because Apollo wanted a child that was given life by um,
Uh,
Aphrodite, and turned her into the literal daughter of Zeus.
yeah, which I think is
She's
it's
a
nice,
demigod.
but I
She's
think
Hercules on Earth.
yeah.
Well, based on what I know, because I know more of the older stories, it was more I was raised on the idea that she was given life from clay, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
same here.
Yeah. So
you
so
know,
figure this one out. So she's the daughter of Zeus, which means that she's technically Hercules' half brother, and
Half
Hercules.
sister.
wait. Wonder Woman is Hercules' half brother.
You know what I mean, half sibling.
Yeah.
Hercules is her half brother. Hercules got it on with Hippolyta because that was the origin of the Amazons. That's why they went to Themyscira, was because Hercules tried to subjugate Hippolyta. And
Well, that was somewhat always it's the idea of Hercules subjugating the Amazons as a whole. That was always a plot point from the very beginning because
yes, but it
I
began with Hercules and
you go back.
Hippolyta.
Yeah, you go back to All Star Comics, I believe number 3, and that's where Wonder Woman actually debuted was before her debut in Sensation Comics.
Right. But that means that Hippolyta was raped by her daughter's half brother.
Yeah,
Which,
but
you
he
know, we're
wasn't her
talking about the
half.
folks who wrote Oedipus Rex here, so come on, it's a thing.
Yeah, but he also wasn't her half brother at that point because she didn't exist.
This is true.
Well, I mean, well, was that more modern continuity? Is that the current continuity that's going on?
I don't know what the origin of Themyscira is now. Well, I don't know if it's been changed since George Perez said, "Oh, it's all the souls of tortured women been given life by the gods to live on an island in new bodies, free from pain." But
Oh, that's just bad. That's just so cringy.
yeah, but that was
you, you,
Perez
you,
Wonder
you
Woman
want
number
you
one
want to
issue.
you want to hear another you want to hear an interesting tidbit. You know how the DCAU turned that tale of of Diana and Hippolyta's relationship.
I know that she couldn't go back home for a while.
Yeah. Well, okay. So in there, at one point, they indicated that supposedly Hades was Diana's father because he helped in molding the clay statue of Diana. It was Hades and Hippolyta who molded the statue of Diana to bring her life. You know, in the DCAU, they made it where Hades and Hippolyta fell in love, and Hippolyta betrayed the gods to Hades. That was the DCA. That was the DCA. That was like Justice League. That was like Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series, Static Shock, Zeta Project, Justice League Unlimited. That stuff.
Batman Beyond.
Yeah, Batman Beyond,
Static
and Zeta.
Shock.
I mentioned Static Shock already.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
So.
That's a fairly comprehensive universe, though. You include
Yeah, it
all those
was.
shows. Although, of course, with the Zeta Project, a few of them, they were. It's just because there was a crossover, so they were just minutely involved together.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Zeta Project spun out of Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was Dietrich Bader would lend the voice. It would become the voice of Zeta for the series.
Yes.
And he would actually later also provide the voice of Batman in one of the DC series afterwards.
Brave and the Bold.
Brave and the Bold.
I've actually got the first season of the Zeta Project on DVD.
You got to keep that physical media.
Yeah. Well, I got it before a lot of this digital media was coming around. Because I had seen a few episodes on TV. I tried to watch it when I could, but unfortunately, they seem not to be able to keep a good continuity, or not continuity, scheduling for some of this stuff.
Yeah. You never knew when it was going to be on.
Yeah. Or preempted or whatever. And then, of course, nowadays cartoons suck. There's no more Saturday morning cartoons.
Nope.
Which is just bad. Just wrong.
Well, television as a whole just seems to be going downhill because, like, now it's like even with a lot of these specialty channels, they sometimes will just oversaturate with like just one or two programs. It's like I can give you an example. Okay, on Pluto TV, which is one of the apps I have on my TV now, right?
I have that too.
Okay, they have a channel called Classic Tunes. Now, mind you, I like a lot of the Paramount stuff. I like a lot of the Fleischer famous studio stuff. But there are times they just oversaturate. They basically have a lot of Betty Boop. They have a lot of Popeye. They have a lot of King Feature stuff. Everything from the older Flash Gordon, like the Adventures of Flash Gordon, the New Adventures of Flash Gordon, Phantom 2040, Defenders of the Earth. Okay.
The thing is with those, why they probably have them a lot is because they're probably able to get them for free or very cheap and to put on this because, that has a lot of old stuff and, no, you don't have to pay for it. Sure, there's ads, I think,
But
you know,
well, yeah, but here's what I'd like to see more of that they haven't been showing as much. Like I'd like to see more Harvey Tubes, and I don't just mean like I don't just mean giving me like a 4 or 6 hour block of all Casper all the time kind of thing, because that's sometimes what they do too. They'll sit there and give you like, okay, I don't mind 2 hour block. I don't mind. Okay, you want to put on 2 hours at a time of blocking of programming? That's fine. And
yeah.
what it
Don't
means
show
is
me
my
every
block is
card.
the way they
Don't show me.
schedule it. You know,
Yeah, don't show me every single episode of Casper, please, in a row. I'd like it
or
spread out a
don't
little.
don't over. At times, a lot of some of these stations it's lazy scheduling, it's lazy blocking. It's like
Yeah, well, like I said, they probably only have so many to choose from, especially being like a free app and all that that just
mm,
plays all this stuff. You know, it's
well,
a lot of it.
even like Boomerang isn't entirely guilt free because um Boomerang does it quite a bit too in terms of just oversaturating with just they actually have more of a library, but they in their case it's more like they if you want to see more of the library, you have to pay more to see more of the library. And
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
the thing that gets on my nerves a little. Like on Boomerang, because I have DirecTV as well here. So on
yeah,
Boomerang, they do have like Tom and Jerry, and they'll like have. But again, it's one of those things where there'll be like 4 or 6 hour blocks in there. You know,
yeah.
yeah,
There's
I'm
a there's
Looney
a
Tunes, and then they might sprinkle in a couple episodes of Popeye here or there, Flintstones or what have you. But I'd like
yeah
to see more Yogi Bear. I'd like to see more Hanna Barbera stuff.
yeah
Without having to pay extra for it. You know,
It's all about
uh,
yeah
having variety.
yeah.
yeah. Oh
You
heck,
know,
there's a channel in my area, and this is off of like the air, free. Like digital air, not paying anything, just getting it out of the air with your digital antenna. Called Charge, and they literally have I think only 4 or 5 shows on that channel, maybe 6 or 7, because they show 4 or 5 hours of like Walker Texas Ranger, and then it's 4 or 5 hours of Chips, and then 4 or 5 hours of another older show, and then another 4 or 5 hours of another show,
I mean, after a while, that can get very boring. Like, okay, so
and that's 5 days a week at least.
yeah, I mean, when I was a kid. Okay, so when I was a kid, right? You
Yeah,
know, here's what I remember. Okay, from let's say from 6 to 9 a.m. Like your networks may have had your main networks, ABC, NBC, CBS. They may have had news programming from 6 to 9, while your independent stations would usually have sometimes a mix of cartoons and or like religious programming, or local programming. You know, they'd have, but some independent stations would have, that'd be where one of your cartoon blocks would be, and they'd usually put 2 hours on in the morning, usually from 7 to 9. Sometimes they'd extend it to like 6 to 9, where it might be a mix of cartoons and or like children's show, like Romper Room, for example, or
yeah,
Captain Kangaroo was on, and then from let's say from 9 to 12, you'd have on your networks. On your networks, you'd have game shows
yeah.
from
Well,
9 to.
heck, that's why. As much as I like the '90s Spider-Man and X-Men series, they were good, but they were bad because they only had like 13 episodes.
Well, because they were on Saturday mornings. Because
Yeah,
they
but
only.
well, we know shows before then went long. Had 20, 30 episodes. Of their shows, but they were also doing a comic book to it. So, 13 episodes, they could do, pretty much each year, one comic a month, basically, you know?
Pretty much, yeah. Hey guys, it's time for me to jump off here, but
Okay.
it's been fun talking comics.
You're gonna
All
share.
right, RJ. Well, if you want to do an outro, if you want to just kind of tell us what you're doing this week and put up any links to your channel again or anything like that.
I have no links, but I will be talking with Agent Zero tomorrow on our channel about his comic book Chrome Dog. And then later this Thursday, I will be talking with Eric Nienaltowski for his book Shadow Sentry. And then Friday, catch me on the Mikestand, where we will be doing the comic book historic retrospective at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Be there or be square.
Actually, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 Central, 9 Eastern. Remember, it's an hour ahead.
I gave everybody my times. Ha! Those are your time is an hour later. Your time slot rather. So
yeah.
So yeah, we will see you again then.
Yeah. And this week will be of course will be in September of 1939. We'll be continuing our coverage there. We'll be covering one of the first books that would eventually be picked up by Archie Comics, initially starting out as MLJ Publications. Blue Ribbon Comic #1 is what we'll be going over.
Oh man, I gotta definitely tune in for that.
Yes,
So,
that's gonna have.
well, anyways, RJ,
Archie
thank you for dropping in, and everybody, if you want to try to, I do know that RJ did put his channel link up in the chat earlier. If he wants to do it again, he can do so.
It's not that far up. People can see it. I will catch you all on the flip side, guys.
All right, talk to you later.
And I got to step away from the computer because I need to use the facilities.
All right.
So I'll be back in 30 seconds, a minute. I might grab a swig of something to drink too.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, so hopefully everybody's having a good time here as we are. We've been talking a lot about comics and stuff, and just reviewing stuff from past. Obviously, not as many panelists this week, but but still we still try. So. Let's see now. Do 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 do. Yeah. So basically, what I was talking about, yeah. All right, so there's Rick's back.
Yes, I am back.
Rick, you before you probably when you're on camera like this, just because I've done it too. You might want to remember to turn off your camera when you're getting ready to step up and away.
Yeah.
Well, unless you like the idea of mooning people.
Well, hopefully I didn't, but yeah, and I don't think
I saw your crack. I saw your crack.
Oh. Oh well.
Don't worry. Hey, I've done it too quite a few times.
Hey, so people were on crack for a few seconds.
Yeah. In fact, actually, Mystery on a Foo even made a little fart meme about it when I did it.
Hey, got you more publicity, right? So.
Well, for the moment, because I think I did go up to 4 viewers for a moment, and they left us again. But yeah, but anyways, yeah.
Did you you sent the link to metal, right?
Yeah, I just did just a little while ago. I
Okay.
forgot to earlier this morning, but then when I realized that, I sent him it just a little what when I said, "Oops, I forgot about." Why is he contacting you, trying to ask
No,
if
no, because if you hadn't, I was just gonna send it to him
well,
as
he's
well.
apparently active on Facebook right now, so he might join us soon. Um, but yeah, so
So what else should we talk about?
actually, one of the things I was mentioning earlier, in fact, I actually did track down that article I was talking about earlier that I covered. Maybe I can share that here. Meant to share it with RJ was still here, but we were having such a good conversation there that just didn't get around to
Yeah.
it. It was this article right here. Oh man,
These seems like some new pictures to it.
yeah. So this is what it was right here. Discord is a new superhero who brings levitas and gravitas to crime-ridden Atlanta. C.S. Johnson was her name. Discord is a brand new superhero from I covered this about a week. Maybe it was this past week because it was actually done on the 17th. So the original. So I probably did this on Wednesday. Discord is a brand new superhero from author C.S. Johnson as she gears up to start crowdfunding for the first issue of the series. She provided Mounting into Comics with an exclusive first look at it, as well as the inside information of the character Kickstarter campaign. So this is the book right here.
Yeah. This seems like a different one than the person from Batman. I thought he had a
Oh, Camrus Johnson. Yeah, complete.
yeah.
Yeah, so Johnson started by summarizing the superhero's background. Stephen Kibwa was 16 years old when his father was tragically killed by the human trafficker known as the Marksman. Now, you notice kind of the double entendre there? Now, a
Yeah.
marksman is usually somebody who shoots at somebody. But you notice how they spell marks right there?
Yeah.
Yeah,
As in Karl Marx.
right. Unbeknownst to Stefan, this led to
Stephen.
him, or Stephen, this led to him gaining the ability to see and hear the song inside each individual's soul. That's a pretty interesting power, huh? That's kind of a form of
Yeah, but
empathy.
okay. He was killed tragically by a human trafficker known as Marksman. Unbeknownst. How does that make you get that power?
But when he does discover his newfound power, he sets out to find his father's killer disguised as Atlanta's very own superhero, Discord. And the Georgia setting was quite intentional, facing down human traffickers, dealing with various political tensions, and living in a variety of crosshairs is all centric to Atlanta too. Currently, and I wanted to give my adopted city a superhero of its own. New York certainly doesn't need any more. Laugh out loud. That would embrace the best, accept the worst, and still believe the best is yet to come.
And hello, Metal. How are you tonight? Metal's in the chat.
Hey, Metal.
Just doing the dip
Yeah,
with the
and
elbow
he's
cough.
actually. Hey, Metal.
Oh, hey. I've actually been backstage since before you started talking about this Discord person.
This comic.
Yeah, it sounds really stupid.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of an interesting empathy. If, as I was reading the article, if anything, she sounds more like somebody who's actually more of a conservative living in a liberal area. Because when I went to the interview, a lot of what she was saying was more in line with what a lot of people in Commonscape would be saying, actually.
Yeah, well, she may have, but she could have a bad comic. Like I said, the thing that really sticks out to me is how does one having their father murdered by some villain has become a superhero, um, get them to have superpowers? You know?
Well, I mean, maybe the reason she doesn't say that here in the interview is maybe because you're supposed to find out by reading the story.
Yeah.
You don't
Well,
want to spoil everything.
Yeah, I get you don't want to spoil everything, but just the way it says it, it doesn't make any sense. But
I guess I
at
can
least
get where you're going with that. Thematically, Discord number 1 is a celebration of family, fathers, and sons, and a reminder of the sacrifice that comes with duty, love, and justice, she explained. Now, at first, I wasn't sure if C.S. Johnson was a guy or a girl, but then they cleared it up here that she explained. So this is a woman writing this, mind you.
yeah.
And
Well, they say right at the top after they say her name, it says she. So
yeah, but like, Discord number 1 isn't just the first of the series; it's the first comic book for Johnson. Quote, "This is my first comic book, and as usual, there's a weird story attached to it," she said, unquote, she said. Quote, "I basically saw the Miles Morales Thor comic and said, quote, I'm the white girl around, or the whitest white girl around, and I could do a better job." Okay.
Yeah. Now, calling it stupid doesn't inherently mean it's bad. I mean, there's some really good stupid things. The first thing comes to mind is the movie Airplane is really stupid, but it's good.
Mhm.
It just, as far as plots go, it seems like a really stupid one. It could be good. Definitely already seems better than most of the stuff you're seeing from like Marvel or DC anyway. So
Yeah. Well, look at the artwork here too. Oh, so I thought about what kind of comic I would like to write, and the first thing I wanted to do was write an original character. Kudos to her on that.
yeah,
Instead of trying to like hijack um, another character and do something with it. So kudos to her on that. And one that had both levitas and gravitas, someone whose family history ran deep and wide, someone who could be distinctively American, someone who loved freedom, someone who could still be hopeful in light of the darkness, someone who could still sing in the face of the most silent midnights, Johnson said, unquote there. Um, Quote, "When I was younger and I first moved to Atlanta, I went to a church in Lawrenceville called 12 Stone," in smaller quotes there. "And one of the pastors taught a sermon on how faith was, quote, the ability to sing at midnight," unquote, or unsmaller quote. And that tied into the superhero powers of music, unquote.
yeah.
The idea
I
of
was gonna
hearing
say she did sound like she could be a Christian based on the stuff before she even says about the pastor.
Yeah. So now, quote, "Ding, ding, 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 Rick. Ding, 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 Rick." Quote, "As a Christian, I believe in God and God as a creator is the one who's." And I really wanted to pass this along to RJ too, because I'm thinking he might want to reach out to her to give her a platform as well. But as a creator, is the one who acts, or sings reality into existence. In parentheses, the Hebrew translations are really interesting, in parentheses. So the idea of music as a conduit of memory, time, love, and power is all very much built into the story, unquote, she added. Johnson isn't short on ideas for Discord either, and readers who want something more than a one and done tale will be glad to hear that the first comic doesn't have to mean the end. I'm already drafting the second issue, unquote, she said, and I anticipate a 5 to 7 issue run of the series. Yeah, I'm after we're done reading this art. I did this on my own. I did this like I think earlier this week. I covered this article earlier this week, but I figured I'd cover it again with you guys to get you guys exposed to it in case you guys wanted to reach out to her as well for any reason. Yeah. So, Metal, you there? Tommy, you there?
Oh, I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah,
I just don't have a whole lot to say on this.
Again, Johnson is running a crowdfunding campaign in order to get the superhero off the ground. Naturally, that means that readers can expect more than just the comic book. Quote, I have found a few variant covers and character art lined up as well, unquote, she said, with regards to stretch goals. Quote, in brackets, plus, unbracketed, an audiobook narrator, Leo voices on YouTube, ready to go for the story, unquote. One of the hardest things for an individual to do when attempting to create his or her own comic book is to figure out how to get the artwork done. If he's an artist, problem solved. Kind of like you and Chris and Diana, huh? There, Rick and Tim.
Yeah.
But if not, finding an artist is tough to say the least. But Johnson found Light Comic Studios, and it looks like it turned out well so far. DC and Marvel are self-destructing, and plenty of people have complained about how the big two are deservedly on the way to extinction. But for those readers who are still interested in comic books and want an original creation and a good story, C.S. Johnson's Discord on Kickstarter is definitely something worth checking out. Now, this article, of course, was written originally. Let me go back up here. Article was written originally by Paul Hare back on February 17th, so we could go to past Friday. So,
yeah, the project hasn't been started yet. There's 24 people following, so
yeah.
I mean, good on her. I mean, we need more people making comics like this. I don't know. I think the problem is that it's taking until now for people to catch up on the same thing. To me, talking about driving themselves into extinction, the big two died like 4 or 5 years ago, right? They were in life support for a really long time already, but to me, they're already dead. I haven't even been keeping up with them. Mostly only looking at like foreign and indie comics. And I mean, this does seem pretty good for an indie comic. It's just kind of sad that it's kind of taking for now for more people to jump onto making stuff and for supporting stuff.
yeah.
But with me exposing it to you guys now, would you guys consider checking it out of it?
Well, I've already just put up to notify me when it launches myself.
Okay.
So I'm already sort of checking it out. I didn't realize it hadn't launched quite yet. I did want to see,
Mm-hmm.
what the prices were. So
Yeah.
I can't see
I'm
what the
just
price
sending
is yet
RJ a
because
message just in case you guys are wondering what I'm doing.
uh,
I'm sending him the link to this article.
uh,
So go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry.
no, like I said, I was, I checked, already. It got me enough interested in try search it out on Kickstarter to see what the prices were. Of course, since it hasn't launched, I can't see what the prices are. But so I'm getting notified upon its launch.
Yeah,
So
I'm just very apprehensive to follow or back any crowdfunding campaign.
yeah,
If it's the first one, like this is this person's first one, I'll put a notification on it. I do like to check out the beginning. I'm just kind of like against the whole continuous campaign thing where like I know it's rough, but it's like you have to back every single comic that a person does. And it's expensive to make comics as an indie creator. I get that myself, but one of the reasons people get into comics is because of how historically cheap they've been. And I think what is more promising to me is when I see in people's campaign that they at least have a goal to get off of the crowdfunding model. It's like this is just so for us to start, but hopefully maybe this after this campaign or maybe after like 3 or 4 campaigns, we can be to the point that we can put out comics and you can just buy them.
yeah, and as you know, that's something I want to do. I want to be able to get it off the webs. People to start being able to somehow do it off my website. But that's going to take a really big campaign for do that. I think that's going to
Well,
take
yeah,
like a
and we of course we've been taught. I know it's been discussed quite a bit over at least over the past couple of months, and of course since Mike Barron and the issues that he's run into, some of the issues dealing with like companies like Indiegogo and
yeah.
and
Yes, but
Kickstarter and just some of the censorship they're trying to pull in the selective censorship, mind you,
yeah.
all kinds.
I
So
I figure it's going to take like a good campaign of 60 to 100,000 for me to be off of crowdfunding.
of just doing
Uh,
it from your own website, you mean?
Yeah, because that way then I can I have the money to start paying people to do stuff ahead of time, and sell off my website, and I'll have the money to print, and all that before they even buy off my website, and
Yeah,
as soon as it comes in, I can ship out.
yeah, and well, I
And
know that
and then hopefully,
RJ I know that there's a site that RJ is promoted, and we've talked a little bit about it on here too. The Fund My Comic site is supposedly, I guess, another crowdfunding source. Um,
yeah, that's a newer one, I think,
yeah,
done by
and,
maybe some CGers. I'm
yeah.
not sure. Do you know much about it, Metal?
No, I know the only other crowdfunding site that's kind of like buried that I know about that's really good for comics, but nobody goes there is Crowdfunder, which is basically barren. Like if you start up on there, you can take over the forums on Crowdfunder very easily. But I'm not familiar with Fund
Well,
My Comic.
I think that's the site. Crowdfunder is a site that I think Mike Barron may actually be trying. I don't know if that's another one he actually got kicked off of, or that people went after him on that one as well. But I know
I
Mike
wouldn't be surprised either. That it's also a very barren site, so it's not like you're going to be discovered on there. You're still going to have to promote it, which I feel is going to be a problem with any site other than Indiegogo or Kickstarter. So like all the sites are equal. You might as well go with a newer startup who's not going to possibly ban you, since you're going to have to do all the promotion anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, one thing I was telling Rick and RJ earlier, Tommy, do you know what happened back in 60 years ago this past Wednesday?
No, I don't. I don't have an anal account of time, so you could tell me.
Okay. Well, the Flintstones episode, The Blessed Event, premiered this past 60 years ago. This past Wednesday, The Blessed Event was the Flintstones episode where Pebbles Flintstone was born.
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah, Pebbles is 60 years old as of this past Wednesday.
Well, she looks very good for her age.
Well, they showed her aged a few times in the in different TV series. We've seen her at least as a teenager.
Well, most of the time they have her still as a baby, but yeah, there was a time
We've seen her as a full-grown adult. There was a special where she was giving birth herself.
Oh yeah, I think I've seen that or heard about it.
Yeah, one of the specials, yeah. And then of course they did have I think it was in the late 70s, early 80s, where in fact RJ kind of alluded to it earlier, where Pebbles and Bam Bam even had their own show in which Sally Struthers was voicing Pebbles.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that was something that was pretty interesting too. But yeah, that was an article that I went over with you guys there, that I went over earlier this week as I was struggling through my cold here. Trying to. And I was even more incommunicado. Yes, I mean I had my computer off for a good portion of the day yesterday, partly due to the fact that, well, Rick, you know that my family did have a dog, Chloe.
Yeah.
We had to put her down yesterday.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Yeah. She was 15. She was, it was time, but my sister just. That morning, Chloe was still having some issues, and my sister just felt, yeah, I can't let her suffer like this anymore. So, we put her down yesterday. So, I know Woody would have wanted to hear that too, but if he still, because he knows Chloe. And usually, one of the main reasons why I would sometimes have to get up, because she would usually be barking at something that I'd have to go bring her in and stuff like that. So, but anyways, yeah. So let's see, what else indeed can we talk about? Well, it's the end of February, so that means that it's the middle of the anime, middle of the winter anime season. So all the releases have already basically been done. They're like well into it. Yeah, and we probably talked a little bit about it. We probably talked about this last week too, but you guys know that the first season of Velma has wrapped up, and they already have slated a new season for that.
Boo!
Is anyone even watching it other than haters?
I don't think so. But with that too, the only and as a couple other commentators, Yellow Flash and Vera Dark more than Yellow Flash was pointing out, the only reason Velma is even getting a second season is probably because they actually had it in the contract to begin with, that
Probably
have multiple seasons, at least 2 seasons, I guess. So, but now the new whipping boy, as it were, will probably be the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. That's the next one to probably get hit with a lot of criticism. And I think we talked a little bit about that a couple of weeks ago, because that what was there, and I did the follow-up article too this past. In fact, I did last Sunday, where we did the follow-up article where Steve Bloom had doubled down on his support of the reparations for Black people that they were calling for in the Proud Family, Louder and Prouder. I remember when we were talking about it in the first time, Tommy, you were saying that you had been that was disappointing you, because you knew that Steve Bloom was a pretty good voice actor there.
Yeah, but you brought it up, and like I already know this, is that most people in the entertainment industry are pretty far left wing, or at least they're somewhat not caring and just end up in whatever the culture forms around it, which is typically a left-wing culture. So they just end up mimicking and mirroring whatever the opinions are that are floating around.
Yeah, just so they can still keep their job, basically.
Yeah, there's very few people that aren't quite like that. There's actually a small section of voice actors who are kind of all friends, that are all like churchgoers and stuff that are pretty cool. You meet them at conventions; they're always nice to people. Like Vic Mignogna is one of them, but there's a bunch of other ones. Like Johnny Young Bosch is a pretty cool guy. I've always liked Johnny Young Bosch, even way back when he was a Power Ranger. But he's kind of like a regular churchgoer type dude. He's really good to the fans, and he tries to stay out of political stuff altogether.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Which Ranger is that again?
He was the Black Ranger in the after the changeover in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. He was Adam.
Oh,
And
okay.
he's done a lot of voice acting for like Funimation and other various things since then.
Well, let's see.
He's the voice of Ichigo and Bleach.
Among some of his more well-known roles include Vash the Stampede from Trigun. That's probably one of his more well-known roles. I'm trying to think here.
Probably his most known one is Ichigo for
in
Bleach, just because of how long Bleach ran.
Yeah, he was Ichigo in Bleach. In fact, he's reprising both of those roles. You know, he's reprising, of course, the Ichigo role in Thousand Year Blood War arc, and in this latest Trigun revival, he's actually the only member of the original cast who is reviving his role. All the others were not, I guess, invited back. I don't know if that's because maybe Crunchyroll / Funimation is doing the ADR work this time, so they're probably not seeking out to like bring back like Leah Sargent and Dorothy Fawn. Even though Dorothy, I couldn't. Aside from the fact that just simply want to use their own actors, could be the only reason, because Dorothy, the Fawn family, is pretty known for being left wing as well. But
yeah, I think it's mostly they try to stay in house as much as possible, and the fact that Johnny already has a contract with them. He does a lot of Funimation stuff. It's just easy to bring him back into the role.
Well, they also decided to ask Johnny to replace Vic as Broly.
For Broly, yeah. Which is funny when you think about it.
Oh, why do you think that's funny?
Well, because he's not very vocal about it, but he actually has shown that he has quite some of the same opinions as Vic. He just hasn't interacted with higher up people to the point to cause dramas. I think at this point we all know that the actual real reason they turned on Vic was not because of any of his opinions, but that he was actually in the running for the director position of the entire company, and they were trying to basically oust him before that happened. But like he's also decent friends with Vic as well, so it's almost funny that they end up voicing a lot of the same type of characters anyway, and it's like Vic 2 just replaced Vic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, Vic. I don't know. I think there was a bit of jealousy there, not just from the fact that he was getting into a director's position. I don't know if that, the crust has always seemed to been that Vic is right leaning. The people who went after him are all left leaning. They figured just label him just label him as a P word, and they can get rid of him. Albeit they did not.
Well, I think that was the battle tactic, but I do think ultimately the war was started because of business.
Yeah. Well, I guess in a way, I guess you do make a good point there, because like one of the other things that I've been coming across a lot more lately in the niche news. I know Vera Dark's talked a lot about it, and I've of course followed up on it a bit. And I know Hero Hayes also talked a little bit about it too. Is the localization issues? Metal, you know what I'm talking about when I say localization.
Yes. Localization versus translation is when you translate something, usually that's just for the subs, but sometimes you dub in just a translation. It's like one-to-one direct. But when you localize something, usually when you get the license, it means you are trying to basically bring it into the framework of the audience. And this is usually what Funimation does instead of just a simple direct translation. And they have a lot of localization licenses with things like Toei and TV Tokyo and stuff like that.
And there's been a lot of criticisms, and like more recently with the sub translations as well. But there's been a lot of criticisms in both the translations and the localizations in recent years because of Westerners putting in their own like political ideology within the context of the anime when there's nothing in the anime that even calls for it.
Yeah.
Probably one of the biggest examples of this that gets called out a lot is there was an anime that I think it was actually in the prison school anime, in fact, where I guess there was in the localization, they decided to throw in a Gamergate line.
Yeah, that was the one I was thinking of. Like that was pretty notorious when that happened.
Yeah, and and those issues right there have been getting a lot of heat because a lot of people don't want a lot of now I'll admit it, I'm a dubber, okay. The thing is, I want to be able to watch a show within its natural time frame. I don't want to have to stop every 2 seconds so I can read the text. I mean, yes, the Japanese voices are nice. They're pretty and all that. I do I like them. Okay. But I want to be able to understand. I want to be able to follow it. And I do watch the dubs. Even after I'll still watch the dubs just because I just want to watch the dubs. But
I mean, there are some dubs that are also really nice. Like I'm not a hater on either side. There are some things I watch sub and some things I watch dub. And there's even a few older ones where like the creators would be like the dub is just better, right? Like Yu Yu Hakusho, the creator of Yu Yu Hakusho loves the way the dub actually made Yusuke like the king of trash talk in the way that like the Japanese version couldn't because of the language change. That was one of those cases where localization.
Too, because that's one of my all-time favorite animes.
Yeah,
I watched that dub. Now that was Funimation that did that dub.
Yeah, it was back in the early days of Funimation.
Back before they decided to just spill out all this liberal garbage. Yeah. And Vic, and I don't know if you know this, but Vic was actually in that.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a few people. Well, I guess he's not still around, but there's a few contemporary people that were on that show.
Well, who do you mean by contemporary?
Like actors who are still voice acting, right? Like the actor for Yusuke himself was Justin Cook, who is still doing a lot of voice roles, which actually was really sad when they did the Final Fantasy VII remake and they didn't just bring back the voice actors from Advent Children. So he wasn't playing Cloud anymore. But there's still a lot of people who were in that show that even if they don't work at Funimation, still get a lot of Funimation contracts and other industry work.
Yeah. Well, most of the people were from Funimation. Like Justin, you may not see as many credits for him nowadays because he aside from
he used to be a voice director at Funimation way back.
Well, he was one of the head of production. He was the head of production for a while there. He's one of the top guys there. He's one of the heads of productions.
Yeah, and so is Chris Sabat, who voiced Kuwabara in that show. Like there's a lot of them that are still around.
Well, Chris Sabat is one of the ones who went after Vic.
Yeah.
In fact, because I actually have the DVD, the DVD collection of Yu Yu Hakusho.
I do too.
And I watched the ones with the commentary, and they pointed out that Justin and Chris. I don't know if it's still the case now, but back then Justin and Chris were supposedly the best of friends. Now,
Yeah.
I don't know for if that's still the case, only because in regards to like Vic, I know where Chris stands in regards to Vic. Justin, I have my feelings on where he might stand, but I don't necessarily want to say because I don't want to inadvertently draw heat to him. You know.
Yeah. Well, that's like the funny thing is a lot of these people were it's one of those cases they were friends until last Thursday type situation, right? Where you can see like even a lot of pics of like Sabat and Mignana like golfing together and smiling and stuff. And even looking at the trajectory of a lot of their relationships is what makes me think it was mostly a business decision and these were battle tactics because this happens all the time in business.
Look at how Vic responded too, because Vic felt totally betrayed by these, and I know it really must have hit him hard with Monica because he and Monica are two of the voice actors of many who went to Funimation from ADV.
Yeah.
Vic started with ADV. Monica started with ADV, and I can give you a good list of a few others who started with ADV and then went to work for Funimation. Okay, most of them, do seem to be left leaning. There are a few that I think are still right leaning, and but I'm not gonna go through all that here.
And I think at the end of the day, like it's starting to matter more and more, but it used to not. But I don't think it matters as much as a lot of people in the entertainment industry are very, very goal oriented and self centered, right? So even like regardless of how they feel about any political belief or anything, if they see an obstacle in their way for their like career trajectory, they will start colluding to get those obstacles out of their way.
Well, I can see that with Monica too, because Monica also had a number of ADR director roles that she was vying for as well. So, and she'd already been doing some of that work a little bit with ADV, and then later more with Funimation. So, but yeah, so like, Chris Sabat, who John Bergmeyer and Chuck Huber, who were Kurama and Hiei. There's John Bergmeyer, as far as I know, is still working with Funimation. Chuck Huber maybe not as much because he kind of sided with Vic, even though he did it in a very kind of clumsily way. Laura Bailey, who did Keiko, she's now out here in LA with Travis Winningham, and they're of course husband and wife now.
Yeah, and I've always liked those two. They seem like nice people.
And they're I think they're more right leaning. They're both more.
Yeah, they're actually really good friends with Vic, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
Vic and Travis kind of have like a like a mock feud because their two fan groups kind of started in Full Metal Alchemist, and they're like on opposite sides. So it's like the Edward Elric versus the Roy Mustang people.
Right. Exactly. Well, that's exactly how that happened. And well, what's kind of interesting too here's another. Well, okay. So in Yu Yu Hakusho, Travis played Yana Gasawa during the Psychic arc or the Black Chapter arc. He was the guy with the spiked hair.
Yeah.
And of course, as you point out, he also was Roy Mustang in Full Metal Alchemist. Of course, they both moved out here to LA and been getting work out here in LA. Laura Bailey, among some of her other works, included Maka Alban in Soul Eater. She was.
I think she was also Lust in Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah, actually, I think. You're right. I think she was. Let's see. Okay. Anyways, Casey Buckley isn't around as much. She played Kuwabara's sister, Shizuru. So let's see some of the other more well known names. Well, Aaron Gismuth, that one of his first. Well, he was in there as Yona's son. Yona's son in the Three Kings arc, the Kid Demon.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I mean, but well, one of the trickier things to gauge is calling Clinkerbeard because
Yeah.
she's kind of she herself is in a real bind because the thing is that I know that she and Laura Bailey, from what I last remember, were at one time were like best friends. They may still be. They may still be, best friends. It's just that since she's kind of in management now, she got stuck right in the middle of all this garbage, and it was like kind of unfair. She's even in some interviews indicated that she wasn't, not necessarily in talking about as much about with the Vic situation, but I know there was one video that's out there where she was talking about, I guess, a situation where she was doing some lines for, I don't remember if it was, let's see, yeah, maybe it was One Piece. I don't know, but where I guess she was just doing her lines, and then I guess it was Sabbath who was doing something, off site, and you could hear him like maybe jumping on a bed spring or something like that, making some kind of weird noise that was coming through and making it sound, maybe more inappropriate than should have been. I know she talked about that. But
Colleen actually has like a really very rare thing when it comes to female voices is you don't normally hear women with strong or powerful voices, and I think Colleen has a really good job with that. Not only just like in the role of Riza Hawkeye, but she also played Lilith in Borderlands. And there's like a
she was also Urza Scarlet in Fairy Tales.
And there's like a power to her voice that is just not common in women's voices. That I usually like hearing her when she pops up in things.
Yeah, and she well, I mean, yeah. So I mean, let's see, who are some? Yeah. So I know like Jerry Joel was Jin in Yu Yu Hakusho. He's still around with them. Again, not one of the ones who got kind of caught up. So of the guys who kind of were the little clique, as it were, that were really going, Christopher Sabat, Sean Schemmel, Chris Rager, and Josh Martin. Those are.
Well, I think a lot of this clique is because Funimation started as a small voice studio. So pretty much all of the actors were also the operations for the studio as it grew up. And mostly everybody who's outside of the clique were more of like contract hires and stuff like that. And
but the thing is, Monica is one of those who started as an outside, because Monica, as I told you earlier, Monica came over from ADV. So
yeah, and I think a lot of those people who came in to be part of operations, not just a voice, right? Because there were people who did other things. People who weren't part of operations, you pretty much just stayed as contract hires.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Well, both the Ayers brothers came over from ADV to Funimation, and were like the late Chris Ayers, who passed away from COPD last year, and his brother Greg Ayers. You might know Greg as his character in he was one of the Hitachi twins I know in Oron High School Host Club. I think he was Kaoru. Like, I know that Greg and Todd Havercorn played the Hitachi twins, and I just can't remember which one played which. Also, Greg was the voice of Negi and Negima.
Okay. No.
Lucy Christian's another one who came over from as well as Chris. In fact, Chris Pat.
I remember one of Greg's big voice roles. He played one of the Ginyu Force in Dragon Ball. He was a Guldo, the guy who could stop time when he closed his eyes.
Yeah. Oh, Dorachet. I think Dorachet was his name in Full Metal Alchemist. Yeah. Lucy Christian. Those, so as I said, Vic earlier, Chris Patton was Greed in Full Metal Alchemist. Monica played the I think his name started with an A in Yu Yu Hakusho. He was the little kid. Monica voiced the little kid who had the power to turn video games into reality.
Oh yeah, I remember that kid.
That was Monica Real, who voiced him. Lucy Christian was Asuna in Negima. She was Wrath in the first Full Metal Alchemist series.
Because mostly the reason a lot of these things end up needing like a truer to manga remake later is because a lot of the shows end up on the heel or passing the source material when they're made. And the original version got some of the 7 deadly sins, the homunculus' names wrong, and like who was supposed to be what. But Brotherhood got them all onto the right mark later on.
Yeah. Well, if you remember too, the original Full Metal Alchemist series was not quite a strict adaptation because
no, it wasn't. But the manga wasn't finished when it was adapted either, so they ended up passing it up and just having to figure out what they were going to do with it.
They kind of ran with their own story. Well, it's similar to what they did with Ghost Stories when ADV got that license. Now, Ghost Stories originally in Japan was not really it was such a bad property apparently that they just told ADV, hey, okay, look, you guys want this? Fine, you can do whatever you want with it, which is rare coming from Japanese because usually the Japanese are very protective of their licenses. It just kind of boggles the mind why a lot of these mangakas are letting people do this to their work, nowadays, because that the Japanese are very protective of their work, You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Guy just went silent. I don't know if you just were waiting for me to stop or.
No, yeah, I was letting you go.
Yeah. So.
Well, they did have. I know with Ghost Stories, they had three rules for when they did the dub for it. One, the overall story had to stay intact, right? Which they did keep the overall story intact. It had to be lip synced correctly. They couldn't actually edit anything like that. So whatever they had to work in there, they had to write the lines to match the actual lip syncing of the series, and they could not change any of the names in the series. So, they could give somebody a funny nickname or whatever, but the actual characters and ghosts and stuff's names had to be identical to the source material.
Right. Yeah. In other words, usually though, with most dubs, they'd have a lot more restrictions than those. I knew there weren't a whole lot of. Basically, the whole point was though that there was not a whole lot of limitations placed on them. 3 sounds about right. When most Japanese companies do license the Western licensors for it to dub it, they usually are a lot more stricter with a lot of the material. But with Ghost Stories, it was just so bad that they just said, yeah, aside from those rules that you just said, they could basically do any. And then if you ever heard the dub of that, and the dub actually did become more popular than the original show because
Oh yeah, I've seen both versions.
Yeah, and we watched it on my Discord a while back.
Yeah, well, it basically, well, then Rick, you probably know this. They threw in a lot of jabs at both. Now, it wasn't just one side. It wasn't like they do it now, where they just using Trump as a perennial punching bag, and it's like Republican. It's not like today where the Republicans are all conservatives and Republicans are all demons, and liberals and Democrats all angels. They poked fun at both sides. Back then.
Yeah, no, the only real demon was Christian Slater's career, which was a running gag that they had in there.
Oh yeah, I think the one movie I do kind of remember him from, and that was because I think he was in it with his sister, was Invincible. Oh wait, no, not no. The song, there was a song called Invincible from it. Billie Jean. I think they actually played brother and sister in, they were real life brother and sister, but they actually played brother and sister in the movie too. The song is what I was thinking of when I said Invincible. It was Pat Benatar's Invincible. We can't afford to be innocent. Stand up and face the enemy. It's
a very uncommon thing too. Like you almost never see people who are actually related to each other in movies together, and if you do, they're usually not playing a relation to the character. And I love it when it does come up because there's almost like an authenticity to the acting because they're using their experience with each other to play off of each other. But I understand why it probably doesn't happen very often.
Actually, it happens more in dubbing because you do have you do have, well, not where they're playing relate, but where they're in the you do have, because you do have a number of family members who are in a lot of shows. Well, I just mentioned earlier the Aaron's brothers, Chris and Greg. Okay.
Yeah.
There's also the Fawn family. Jonathan Fawn, Tom Fawn, Dorothy.
Well, I think it happening in dubbing coincides with the thing I was going to say and why it doesn't happen that often in like the live action. And I think it's because specifically siblings, but family members have a really hard time being professional with each other in various ways. Brothers, more than anything, especially on stage, tend to screw around with each other and cause a lot of problems. And it can sometimes be a nightmare for the director. So I think that's the reason why it doesn't happen very often in the live acting setting. But in voice acting, in dubbing, you're often not even in the same room as your fellow castmates unless there's like a big thing where they're trying to record everyone in unison.
Okay, the difference between like what we know of as original animation or Western animation, the characters do that work, and dubbing. Okay, so when it's an original production, everybody is brought in to read the characters all at the same time, usually.
Not always these days, but traditionally that's how they used to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas in dubbing, you're brought in one at a time because what it is one of the things you were talking about earlier. They have to match the lip flaps, right? They have to match the lips. That's what they call them, lip flaps.
Yeah.
We were calling it lip syncing, but basically the lip flaps have to match.
Yeah, and there's very few times where they call everyone in because there are like cases where maybe characters are saying the same thing simultaneously and they're trying to all match them up together and stuff like that. I remember in the production of Hells, which was very recently, and that was done at Sound Cadence, which is a local studio here in Dallas. There's a lot of voice acting studios in Dallas. But a lot of
had their studio in Dallas too.
Yeah. They're I believe they're up in it starts with a P. Blanking on it. It's near Frisco. Why am I blanking? They're in the general Frisco area.
Pasadena?
No, not in Pasadena. It's gonna bother me because I usually know all the names of the areas around here, but I'm having a brain fart. Doesn't matter. They're in the general Frisco area, is where it used to be. But yeah, so in Hells, there's a part where everyone in the cast is basically like singing something at the same time with each other, and they brought all the voice actors in to do that song together. So there's times where they will see each other, but it's very, very limited because they are trying to match, since dubbing is just a form of ADR.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, but there was a time when they were when Chris Patton, Monica Rial, Greg Ayers, and Lucy Christian, when they were all together, there was a time when they were together at ADV where it's like basically they were basically almost just about every there was a period there throughout the early to mid 2000s where they were among the main characters in most series. And you could also throw in Vic, Hilary Haig, Allison Keith as well in there, and Shelley King Black as well, where those individuals you could find them in just about every ADV production there was in some form or another. Sometimes one person, sometimes Chris and Monica would be the leads. Another time it might be Chris and Lucy. Another time it might be Lucy and Greg. So they the four of them the first four I mentioned: Chris Patton, Monica Rial, Lucy Christian, and Greg Ayers. Just about almost most of the stuff from the early to mid 2000s, they were the headliners on a lot of those a lot of those shows. With Hilary Haig, I think with Hilary Haig, Brittany Karbowski, Vic Mignogna, Blake Shepard, and even Chris Ayers all coming along. And then you did have some of your voice actors there who are more specific, who are more character specific. Like John Swayze would do a lot of these kind of older men, 40 to 50, huh?
Yeah, well, I remember back then too, and I did remember the name of the city was Plano, Texas.
Plano, okay.
Yeah. But back then they actually had a big competitor who, on average, was actually pretty inconsistent with the voice acting. I would say one of the biggest advantages Funimation had, and some of the more southern U.S. acting like studios, was because they actually understood the Japanese language to some degree. Like how things should be pronounced and stuff, was a Canadian studio known as Ocean, right? Ocean did a lot of dubbing back then, but they also often slaughtered Japanese names and stuff like that, or they had a hard time keeping talent on a series long term. So you'd end up like watching something like, say, Ranma 1/2, and there'll be one character whose voice changes 3 times throughout the entire series. There was a very common guy.
It happened a little bit when Ocean was doing Dragon Ball as well.
Oh yeah, Dragon Ball was a big one too, where they kept changing voices. But Richard Cox, who always had a very funny name because his name would be Dick Cox, was around a lot. He's done some stuff with Funimation since then, since Ocean's not really around to any degree anymore. It technically exists, but they don't really do much. He was in a lot of stuff back then. He was like one of those like staple names and equivalent to the other people you were naming up there.
Well, I think professionally went by his full name, Richard Ian Cox.
He did, yes. But a lot of the dubs literally only had Richard Cox on there. They didn't even have the Ian. Like if you go and watch Inuyasha, where he was the voice of Inuyasha, didn't have his middle name. I think he added that later. So like if you go on IMDb, it'll say Richard Ian Cox, but those older roles it will say as Richard Cox.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know him. Of course, I know him as Inuyasha from he like Richard Ian Cox, Kirby Morrow, Brad Swale, the Dobson,
Yeah.
particularly Paul and Michael Dobson. Brian Dobson, not as much. Let's see, those are some of the male voice actors who were pretty busy up there. Among the females, they included, of course, Yanis Yad. Let's see, Nicole Oliver, Kelly Sheridan, Lisanne Bailey, maybe to a lesser degree, Saffron Henderson, Saffron, who came down to L.A. to do Sherry Belmont in the Zatch Bell series, would also do like Soda, was the original voice of Soda in the Inuyasha.
Yeah. Well, like, so one of the things I really liked about Ocean, even people like to make fun of their dubs, and to some degrees they should, right? Like saying Sasuke when the character's name should be Sasuke, but they didn't do a lot of localizing when they did their localizations. It was mostly as raw translation as possible a lot of the time. So a lot of sentences sounded clunky and awkward, but you were probably getting a more true to form version of the story that you're watching than a lot of the localizations we get now.
Yeah, I remember there was a time back there in the 2000s through the early 2010s where as I often called them, and I've done videos on this too. You can go back on my channel and look some of the videos up on I did on some of this, but I called them the 6 dub capitals because these were the 6 main studios that were pretty well known for dubbing at a certain time, throughout the 2000s. And okay, so you had in Dallas, you had Funimation. LA was I just counted as one, even though you had both Studiopolis and Bang Zoom. Well, Studiopolis is more of a, but Studiopolis, Bang Zoom, Genion and Pioneer earlier and all that. But you had LA.
It is fair to count those as kind of the same because there's a lot of people that voice work that jump between the two.
Right. Ocean up in Vancouver there, and we already went through some of the names there. ADV, and I've talked about them, and then you had New York, which of course had Central Park Media, Inoki Films, and NYAV Post. And NYAV Post was opened and operated by, of course, Michael Centurna-Class, who was a voice actor / voice director on a number of series too, for not just for some New York stuff, but also for stuff for Funimation as well. Also, Pokemon has primarily been dubbed out of New York, originally with 4Kids and then with TPCI. So
yeah, that good old 4Kids dub.
Yeah.
Those aren't donuts.
and then the final one was technically it was a subsidiary of Ocean. It was Blue Water Studios, probably the least well known of the 4, but they had a pretty good group of voice actors too.
I like Blue Water. I think they did a good job.
I've actually talked to Hans Wackenschauser and Caroline Day before, and Lucas Gilbertson. They're pretty cool people. It's kind of funny. You would think you get the impression. Well, we know Rick is probably not. Rick is probably the odd man out in this case, but you get the impression that most Canadians tend to be left leaning, but
I think that depends where you are.
Yeah, that's.
Well, I get that. I get that. Okay.
You would think
It's
that
like
because we elected,
you have areas that are more left leaning and more that are right leaning. I get that.
But even with that, you would think that based on the fact that Justin Trudeau got elected. But if you were to look at the popular vote, more people voted conservative PC last time, but
Didn't he have to
unfortunately it
form a
was
minority government?
yeah. But because that was so spread out, for the conservatives, he ended up getting more seats. They're more concentrated where we're more spread out. We're everywhere. They're in certain
Yeah,
spots like
just like the
Toronto.
U.S. It's very reflective of the same in that
It's
way.
probably like here in the U.S. where the liberals tend to be more in the urban areas, and they're creeping more and more into the suburban areas, and the conservatives are more in the rural area, the ex-urban and
Yeah,
rural areas.
yeah.
That's probably
Like
that's probably the thing. But
a big thing here is like Toronto is very liberal, and I believe Montreal.
yeah.
And I
Vancouver is
think
very
Vancouver.
liberal, but it's also like a Hollywood TV center. So of course, entertainment industry, it's going to be very, very liberal.
Yeah, it's known as Hollywood North. So
Well, Blue Water too is based in Calgary, so
Calgary's cool. I've
yeah.
known people that live there.
Yeah.
yeah, but they're even the city itself is being a lot liberals because they have a real liberal mayor there right now, from what I've heard.
Yeah, but it's the surrounding Calgary area. It's actually very, very almost hill country. A lot of the people just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
Well, I do know that Calgary was also the home to Stampede Wrestling for a number of years, and I got the impression that
It's also where Ted
Calgary,
Cruz was
Alberta,
born.
tends to be more like kind of an old Western type, like Calgary, like the Calgary area is more like Montana here in the States.
Yeah. Like again, it's very almost hill country. A lot of the people there just want to be left alone. And then there's the city of Calgary, where it's like a city. Most cities tend to be more left leaning, if not totally left wing, because that just happens in population centers. It's because you realize there's a lot of different problems that people focus on when you're jammed tight like tuna fish or sardines, whichever metaphor you want.
Yeah, but yeah, well, I like a lot of the I do like a lot of the Blue Water dubs because they're actually quite entertaining, and they don't really try to push any like buttons or like, even though I know there are like at least a couple of voice actresses from who work for Blue Water. I think Marriott Sluter and Onalea Gilbertson. They, from what I've seen, those two are a bit more liberal, but I think overall most of them tend to be more conservative. That group of voice actors, but if I've watched some of the, like one of my favorite dubs from them is Doki Doki School Hours. That's kind of entertaining. Um, it's funny. The slice of life stuff is funny. Doki Doki School Hours is a school anime. Basically school center anime. You have all the the meme type characters. You have the jock. You have the cook. You have the class rep, all that. So, but yeah, you guys realize we've gone past 2 hours here.
Yeah, we started
I did.
about voice acting and stuff.
Well,
I think
Tommy, I'm glad you were on tonight because it was good to actually talk to somebody about like some of the dub voice actors.
Yeah, because I'm currently at the point where I like subs a lot, but if I am going to watch a sub, I'm probably going to watch it through backwater channels and watch a fan sub, because the subs are getting affected in just the same way that the dubs are. It's like, well, if I'm going to do that, I might as well just watch the dub anyway, right? So I'll watch things when they're brand new before the sub comes or the dub comes out, where people will do like fan subs and stuff like that, and then I'll go catch and see what they did to the dub version later on.
Yeah. Well, there's one particular translator is getting real famous for and bragging about quote unquote botching translations. Katrina, I can't even pronounce her last name, but it starts with an L. It's like Loda Kaikus or something like that. I don't.
I'm assuming it's the same one that I'm constantly seeing in Twitter threads and stuff like that, and in different
It's
news
probably
articles.
her because Vera Dark's talked a lot about her. I've talked about her a bit, reading through some of the Bounding the Comic articles on her and stuff like that.
I think even like Hirohei has talked about her. Like, she's getting around.
Yeah, because she's like sitting there bragging. In fact, I don't think it was her. I think it may have been another translator, but somebody who recently translated. In fact, I did this article the other day. Something about I'm Inuzekai's dog. Inuzekai-san's dog. Where the story was about this guy who who somehow got transferred, his soul somehow got transferred into the dog of his crush. And they were trying to, and one of the things they had talked about how one of the words they used was not considered appropriate for, was just made no sense. They called one of the supporting characters a Gyaru girl.
Oh yeah. Which because if they're using Gyaru, which literally is just the word girl, like English word girl, but said with like Japanese like phonetics, is a type of subculture that it isn't quite the right look, but here you would probably just translate it to like bimbo, right? It's like with the fake nails, bleached hair, tan skin, all very girly. It's a very common culture in Tokyo, specifically the Shibuya area. A lot of them, they'll even like have all kinds of accessories and stuff on them. Almost unrecognizable as a human being with how girly they make themselves look. But yeah, that did not actually match the character they were talking about.
Yeah, but and I'm kind of considering how I know how protective a lot of these. Well, we've also started hearing about how some of the creators have come out and said that they're not happy with some of these adaptations. I know one of the things that was talked about recently was the creator for Cowboy Bebop had recently come out and said that he couldn't get past the first scene in the live action adaptation.
Yeah. And he's one of the exceptions because, like, almost everyone in Japanese high schools learns English as a second language, in the same way that, like, here in Texas, I had to learn Spanish as a second language. Most people only have like a slight grasp of it after high school. They don't remember it, and some people, they can speak it okay enough to talk to foreigners that come to the country, or to use the internet, but a lot of them aren't very good at reading. And he's one of the few exceptions. He's a very worldly person. That reads English very fluently. So he was actually able to read the script. But a lot of these creators, though, they don't actually know, because their English isn't necessarily that good, until somebody brings it to their attention. Even a lot of the marketing departments, they think they're protecting their IP, but they don't actually know what's happening to it until somebody explains it to them.
Yeah. So they're not even because I would figure that it's a head scratcher for me why they would keep license if they had a clue as to what was being done to their IPs. It's a head scratcher to me why they would keep giving it to these people who are just totally just
butchering it.
their sense of creation, balling it up like a piece of toilet paper, and you get what I mean?
There's another factor to that too. So you're seeing a disconnect between the publishers and the creators starting to pop up too, right? So a lot of the creators, whether it's in like manga or video games or whatever, they're still trying to make very Japanese things because they're Japanese people. They want to make it for their Japanese audience. They also know that because things come from all over the world, even if you're an international person, you probably want a taste of the Japanese culture. That's why you're buying Japanese products. The publishers, though, the corporate end of things, are trying to globalize and make things for contemporary or modern audiences, as you hear that term a lot. Even the CEO of Square said that they were going to start making their video games for global audiences. despite some of the people in their departments being like, oh, well, no, we want it to feel very Japanese and stuff like that. So there's like this disconnect on the corporate marketing level versus the actual creator level.
Yeah, well, there is that woke corporate subculture that's coming into play into it as well.
Yeah, even the Pokemon company said that, which makes sense for them too. They're like the biggest company on the planet. Said that they're going to be making things with a global audience in mind.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but that's so hard because you can't please everybody.
Well, what that means is that they're going to be taking, like, in count things like how the UN feels, or these like social credit things like ESG. When people say global audience, they're looking at like where the funding comes from, like the environment, social, global scores and stuff like that.
Yeah, yet these
I
people
think
aren't
that,
funding anything.
I think what for me, particularly when I look back on some of the earlier animes that I was watching, on stuff like Yu Yu Hakusho, like Sailor Moon. Now, granted, I know a lot of people were very critical of the Deke and the Cloveway dubs.
Yeah,
I
because
know
Sailor
that I
Moon
know
is a very
a lot of people are
gay
critical
story.
when the West, what they call batterizes the dubs, when they make it like very kid friendly. But there is an appeal to it to a certain extent. But you go back, you watch some of these dubs before they all went, before the companies here in the West decided to go all woke, even even in more recent years with like Full Metal Alchemist and Bleach and stuff like that. One of the things that I found appealing was that it was from a Japanese perspective. Like I'll give you a good example of something that I just watched that's a little bit more current that got criticized, but so there was an original net animation called Ico Incarnation. It came out back in 2018. Okay, now there were two dubs made of it. The original dub was done by a studio in Korea. It was an English dub, but they were done by Studio VOA. But then Bang Zoom went back in and redubbed it because the first dub got criticized because they felt that they were too strict in the translation. They didn't localize it enough. Well, I watched the original dub version and I actually liked it. It was nice, quaint. You know, um, if their idea of proper localization is throwing in a bunch of like modern stuff, it's I don't necessarily think that's necessarily a bad thing, or a good thing. It's like you know, like some of the more like I told you about the six dub capitals earlier, but there are a few others out there. A few other like minor ones that did a handful of stuff too, like Central Coastal Studio in Carolina. They're an example. Some of the Singapore dubs. Those ones can actually be quite entertaining and nice to listen to because there's not as much of not as much BS going on. It's like,
Oh yeah, listen, if you want a great dub experience, if you don't mind reading the subs, or if you speak good Spanish, the Mexican Spanish dub of Dragon Ball Z is probably the best out of all of them.
yeah. Well, I know I've been running off in the mouth for quite a bit here. Did you guys have anything more you wanted to add or start up or anything like that?
Well, I just want to show off two other of my comics that I got in that bunch of comics.
Okay, why don't you do that, Rick? Because I took quite a bit of time there.
Classics Illustrated number 10 from June 1966.
Robinson Crusoe.
Yeah, I got a bunch of these actually, but I'm just showing off the earliest one. Yeah, like I don't have any numbers before number 10. I just thought, that might be neat for you to see. You know, as you can see, it's got a page or two that, well, they're not loose, but it's a little rough on the edge.
Hmm.
And although this isn't quite as old, The Savage Sword of Conan, number 52 from 1980.
Hmm.
I just thought you might like that with, how
Hmm.
old they are.
All right. Well, anyways, guys, we're coming up on 2.5 hours, so that was a good conversation, good set of conversations there. I think we'll start to wrap up. I think the first thing, of course, I will do is this weekend in Nietzsche history, and then we will wrap things up with, and we'll go round the horn to let you guys do an outro. Sorry, I didn't give you a chance to do an intro there, Tom. We were just so into what we were talking about and didn't even give you a chance. I
Oh
guess
no, it's fine.
with the outro. Well, anyways, let me just review here some stuff. 1983. Okay, so without any further ado, we're going to go back, take a look back at this weekend in each history. History! So, first off, we're going to head back 75 years ago yesterday to 1948. On yesterday's date, 1948, the 40th issue of All Star Comics went on sale on that date. Of course, that was All Star Comics we were talking about earlier because All Star Comics #3 was where. And you look there. There's the woman right there. If you see her all the way over in the corner there.
Yeah.
Um,
And Adam, Green Lantern, Flash, Hawkman, Black
yeah,
Canary.
yeah. So on this date back in
Oh,
1948, 75, or on yesterday's. Oh, did you want to say something there, Tommy?
and Dr. Midnight. I missed
Yeah,
him.
yeah. I thought I heard somebody like breathe or like say, "Oh," like they wanted to say something.
No.
So on yesterday's date back in 1948, 75 years ago, the 40th issue of All Star Comics came out. The story was "The Plight of a Nation," written by John Broome, penciled by Carmine Infantino. Frank Giacola did the inking. Arthur E. Petty did the penciling. Bernard Sags also did some inking with some other art by Alexander Toth. Of course, this was reprinted in Justice League of America #10, 1974, and All Star Comics Archives. And then there's the list of all the people involved there. So on yesterday's date, back in 1948, was the 40th issue of All Star Comics. Came out from DC Comics, known at that time as National Comic Publications.
And it was only 10 cents.
Right.
Ooh.
A far cry from the $5.99 or the $3.99 of today, huh?
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
$4.
because I think with inflation, comics should cost like $1.15, not like almost $5.
Yeah. So, anyways, moving on to the next piece of news history. As 30 years ago yesterday, the AIC and Pioneer produced OVA series Moldiver premiered or was released 30 years ago yesterday. It was a magical girl superhero anime parody. So yesterday, Moldiver.
I'm pretty sure that's pronounced Moldiver.
Moldiver? Oh.
Because the Japanese is Morudaiba.
Oh yeah, okay. Moru Daima. Thank you for pointing that out. Moldiver. So Moldiver was released yesterday, 30 years ago. And also happening 15 years ago yesterday, soon as I can get to it. 15 years ago today, 15 years ago yesterday, WWE had its Monday Night Raw event from the U.S. Airways Center. It was 8 days after their No Way Out pay-per-view. On that night, in the main event, saw Triple H and John Cena team up to defeat Randy Orton and Ken Kennedy in what could be called a teacher versus student match, as we'll turn that in a moment. Shawn Michaels would defeat Lance Cade, with, of course, his tag team partner at the time, and, of course, future two-time NWA World Champion Trevor Murdoch in his corner via disqualification. Now, the reason I said teacher versus student here is because Lance Cade was one of the guys who graduated from Shawn Michaels' Texas All-Star Wrestling Academy. Don't know. Well, you might have known this because you lived there in Texas, Tommy. But did you know that Shawn Michaels ran a wrestling school?
I've probably been told that at some point in time. I'm not super big into wrestling, but I have lived with people who are super, super big into wrestling. So it sounds right. The fact probably exists in my head somewhere.
Let's see. Chris Jericho defeated Jeff Hardy in a Money in the Bank qualifying match. And the opening match of the night saw Hardcore Holly and Cody Rhodes, who just made his return to WWE within the last year, defeating Carlito Caribbean Cool and Santino Marella, who is, of course, now the director of authority for Impact Wrestling, with Maria in their corner. So that happened 15 years ago, yesterday, from the U.S. Airways Center in Phoenix, Arizona. And finally, I'll get to one more. Got one more piece of. All right, no, not that. On this date, 15 years ago, which of course the day after Monday Night Raw, Mike Young Productions' Bratz, the series, the American CGI animated series, aired its final episode on this date 15 years ago today on Fox Kids. So on this date, 15 years ago today, Fox Kids would air the Mike Young Productions Bratz, the series, the computer CGI animated series.
Oh, yeah, I remember this. I also remember changing the channel until it was over.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's still animation cartoon history,
Yeah. It's just, I remember Fox Kids went from focusing on content that, like, you could say was boy-oriented, but it was, like, loosely made to where anyone could enjoy it, to
I think
splitting
the
up
Japanese have a
boy-girl.
word for it. I think the Japanese have a word for it.
Yeah.
Shonen?
Well, shonen literally means young boy, right? Because it comes from the Chinese word "nain," which means boy, and "shou," which means small. Just like shoujo means young girl. So some of the stuff was kind of shonen, but like in general, it was kind of family content. Like you could take your kids to go watch a family movie, like Disney's animations and stuff like that. But then at a certain point in like the mid-aughts, they're like, okay, well, this is going to be the boys block, and this is going to be the girls block, and then another boys. And all it did was make me like jump over to Kids WB for a little bit, which they eventually changed names.
Yeah, Kids WB, then CW Kids, and all that. Yeah. But anyways, guys, well, so what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna give you guys a chance to do your outros, as we prepare to finish off, and if you guys can, of course, stick around after the show for just a couple minutes, just to hang and talk a little bit more. Just for a few minutes. So Tommy, why don't we'll go counterclockwise this time. We'll start with Tommy, then go to Rick, and then I'll finish up. So Tommy, you want to do it, and feel free to, of course, share any links in the chat as well.
Yeah. I specifically. So obviously my stuff is X Dynamis Chaos. I do have a website for it, but specifically I'm going to share the Global Comics link to it because I mirror my stuff everywhere. And Global Comics is a really cool site that I learned about recently from other people that I think any comic creator should get onto. I've been trying to get Rick onto it. And it is good for people who put out both free and premium stuff for digital comics. It is basically a storefront that also kind of works as a feed page. So you can update your audience and stuff like that too. I put a lot of my web comics up there as completed chapters for free. But like if you have a book, like almost finished remastering the Canadian Shield, you can put it up there for whatever the digital price is, and it can help fund the other stuff you're doing. And they even have some bigger names. Like I see that Top Cow is on there, and then there's some other, like Valiant has stuff on there too. So it's not just indie. You are on a shop that has both big and small creators on there. So there's searchability. It's a really good place that I think more people should check out, and you can find my stuff there.
All right. You want to plug your channel a bit too, and your show?
Yeah, I could plug one. Twice a week, I host the Vomitorium podcast. So let me pull that link up, which is very fun, just a live show similar to this one in many ways. We just have a good time talking about just whatever's in the news that interests me and my co-host or any guests that we have on.
I'm just waiting for you to put the link.
Yeah. It was taking me a second and a half to find it.
I know. I've sat in a couple of times on it as for your show for a few minutes there. I know you guys tend to focus, at least from my perspective, you seem to focus more on video game stuff.
That's what everybody says, and I think it's because most of our viewers don't care as much about video games in the live. Actually, I think most of the people who come and watch it afterwards, that is what they care about. But like, I've been keeping track of all of the topics that we've been doing for the last 3 months, and we've talked about film and movies more than anything else, surprisingly enough. It's just whatever's going on. There's a lot of video game and film news going on. If there's cool comic stuff going on, I love to talk about cool comic stuff or animation. Or if I'm currently watching an anime, I try to plug it. But it's whatever's going on.
Yeah. All right, and there's a link to his channel and his show if you guys want to check that out. Anyways, anything else, Tommy?
No. I think that's good. Just I make a lot of stories. I would like it if people read them.
All right. Well, Rick, you're up. You want to tell everybody what you're doing this week? Share any links to your channel or anything like that?
Just shared the link to my channel, and I'm Rick Piper Cross Comics. I will be putting up a bunch of shorts this week, meaning like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe a little bit less, depends. For various projects that I'm doing or working on for somebody else. And I will be having a live show on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. And then next Saturday over on Mighty Geek Studios, we'll be doing a draw along. Me, him, Chris, I forget how to pronounce it. Tomolovich. And whoever wants to join live else join on the panel, and whoever just wants to draw along or even not draw along in the chat.
All right, and I will try to make one of those times. The few times I have tried to catch you is usually when Chris been hosting, but it's by the time I get to it, he cut it out because nobody was there. So
And that's at that would be at noon your time. We
Yeah.
start 3 p.m. Eastern
Yeah.
and
For
go
me,
for 2 or 3
usually
hours.
when I turn my computer off for a little while in the morning, usually at around time I'm trying to get caught up on a lot of my subscriptions. So that's usually why that happens. But anyways, okay. So now it's my turn here. So I thank everybody for being here tonight. I hope to see everybody back here. So this week on the Mikestand. Now, hopefully this week I'll be able to do the full week. I'm stronger this time. I'm not like almost dropped dead like I was on Monday. But Monday, of course, tomorrow we'll be going over the DC and Marvel releases. Just checking out what. Oh. Oh boy. Hello, Tim.
Did I miss the show?
Yeah, you're late.
Yeah.
We're closing.
Yeah, we're actually wrapping up.
All right. Well, see you later then.
All right, I'll see you. I'll definitely see you on. Hopefully, I'll see you next week on
Yeah.
here, and then I do know that I'll be seeing you on the 24th.
They can have a longer show.
Huh?
This is an extra long show. You came in very late.
Well, 3 hours. A 3 hour show. Come on, Mike. Do it.
We've already gone through everything that we could talk about. So, but
curse you. All right. See you next week.
all right, see you next week, man. All right. Anyways, I saw him pop in. I'm going, oh boy, I'm late. Anyways, okay, so tomorrow, of course, we'll be going over the DC and Marvel release. Now, I know not everybody's too keen on what's going on, but just to be in the know of things, it's always nice to see. And sometimes it's good to get a good laugh at what's about to bomb next, right? Right, Rick?
Yeah, for sure.
Just so bear that in mind. And then Tuesday to Thursday, of course, I go through articles, try to go through bounding into comics as much for the more editorial stuff, and then more profile stuff for back in the chat with me. Yeah. So, anyways, Tuesday, Thursday we do the niche newscast where we cover niche news. Cover everything in the world of niche from anime, cartoons, comics, manga, pro wrestling. And I know RJ often kids. Well, I don't understand how all that goes together, but Mike does. So, well, I've explained it before, and I'll explain it again. Of course, that stuff is considered niche because traditionally it's niche. Now, granted, lately a lot of that stuff has become more mainstream, which means it's more appealing to everybody. It's the whole global audience tactic. But initially, and Tommy, you probably remember this, anime at one point was considered a niche thing, where a select group, of people, specifically usually it was 15 to 25-year-olds were into it.
Oh yeah, no. I remember my cousin and I would have to go to the Hong Kong market to get like VHS like tapes where somebody had taken the thing and then dubbed the captions over. So they actually needed 2 different VCRs to do it, but we'd get bootleg like anime and stuff, like the old school hard way.
Yeah. So that's why I call it niche, because a lot of the stuff is not stuff that, let's say, everyday people or Main Street people would necessarily be talking about. It's like anime, cartoons, comics, manga, pro wrestling. Usually, most of the time, and a lot of times they traditionally have also, not only have they been considered niche or off Main Street, but also youth culture. Because a lot of these things usually, the old pro wrestling, the ones prior to the birth of the NWA, like 30 back, you go all the way back to the 40s, 30s, and beforehand, was more like old people who were in the seats because they were still marketing pro wrestling as, but it was still, you could still consider it niche because it was still appealed to a specific group of people, whether they be grouped by age or by. And Rick just put up another.
Oh, I see you finally signed up, Rick. Let me go
Yeah.
follow you.
I followed you already.
Yeah.
No, not that not that NWA 10. National Wrestling Alliance is what I was talking about.
That is an NWA though.
Yeah. I know what he's talking about. He's talking about the Raptor. He's talking about
Numbers with attitudes?
No. A very bad word. It's considered a very derogatory term used towards African American people.
Nincompoops with attitudes?
Nerds with an agenda.
Anyways. So we got that Tuesday and Thursday, and then on Friday, of course, is the historical comic book set where I've been going back through time and coming back forward. Where we just started Friday with, of course, Mighty Geek Studios helped me out to do a couple stories from DC. Some of the comics that were published by DC. We of course read through the second part of Batman versus the Mad Monk and the Return of the Gore storyline the other day. I just wish Terry had been able to join us, so we got his viewpoint on that. But this Friday, RJ Carter will be joining me from Critical Blast. And we'll be going over comics that went on sale from Archie Comics' predecessor, MLG Enterprises, I believe, or publications or something like that. Blue Comics #1. And then on the 10th, that's when Rick will be with me as co-host. On the 10th, we'll be going over comics that went on sale from Harvey Comics from September 1939. Speed Comics, which means, of course, we'll be looking at Shock Gibson again. You remember Shock Gibson? Well, I know it was with me doing, but you were in the audience when we were.
Yeah.
I remember your comment on him too. You commented on how his costume was very similar to the Golden Age Flashes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun. Rick, would you say you have a lot of fun when we do the historical comic retrospect?
Yeah, for sure.
And you learn a lot too, don't you?
Yeah.
You do learn it. I mean, I didn't get surprised, both Rick and me, when we found out that Namor was considered, by some would be considered an outright villain.
Yeah,
I could see it.
Yeah. With his first story, it's like, nowadays you expect something like that from a comic, but I wasn't expecting that from a comic back then for, like, as I said, a straight up villain.
At least from the reader's perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's kind of the nice thing about that too. Looking back and looking at the perceptions of the time there too.
Yeah. And as I said, with those few new comics that I got, I have a reprint of those stories, and it's a part reprint of Marvel Comics #1 with just those two, maybe another story in it, but I have to look better. I only basically looked at it and saw those two in it. So
next Friday, so this Friday will be RJ Carter. We'll be going over comics that went on sale in September 1939 from Archie Comics. Rick will be joining me on the 10th when we go over comics that went on sale from Harvey Comics in September 1939. We'll basically be covering September 1939 from this past Friday through the first week of April. So, and I have the guests all lined up already through March 31st. So,
that's good.
Rick will be joining me on the 10th. Terry has agreed to join me on Mighty Geek Studios. We'll be back on the 17th. when we'll be covering Centaur Comics that week from September 1939. And of course, with Archie Comics, not only will be reading from that comic, but we'll be also looking back at some of the early history of Archie Comics and through the history of Blue Ribbon.
Do you know? Do you know what ones you're going to be reading out of that? What stories yet?
From which one? From Blue Ribbon or from?
Yeah, Blue Ribbon from the MGL.
From the Archie MLJ, I think.
Yeah, MLJ.
I haven't decided yet. I've only got kind of a scant idea. I've kind of looked over the. I'll probably be doing that research probably.
This week.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
But then on the 24th, Tim Olson will be joining me as we go through Fox Feature Syndicate comics, which will of course be like Wonderland comics and Mystery Men comics. So, meaning we'll be featuring such characters as Green Mask, Blue Beetle. Let's see. Oh, the Flame. The Flame. That's who I was trying to think of. Zanzibar the Magician. So those will be some. And then on the 31st, RJ will be back with me again, as we will be at that point looking at Levi Garrett. So RJ will actually be with me for the two comics that I'll be premiering. In essence, premiering in terms of the coverage. Meaning we'll be looking at the early days of Archie as MLJ, and then Lev Garrison. Lev Garrison, as RJ reminded me, I was kind of aware of it already, but Lev Garrison was the company that gave us the original Daredevil, not Marvel's Daredevil. There was a Daredevil character before that was done by Lev Garrison.
Yeah, that was Blue and Red.
Yeah. That's me. So,
It makes sense to be Blue and Red. I mean, there was Evil Knievel just wore USA colors all the time.
Yeah,
so if you're thinking of a Daredevil, you're probably thinking of somebody wearing an American flag.
All right, everybody. Well, I thank everybody for being here tonight, and I thank you guys for all the likes and shares. Hopefully, everybody had a good time listening to us talk about Nietzsche tonight. We got into we got into some good conversations about some comics. Talked about that Discord comic that's coming out. You guys might want to check that out.
Some TV stuff.
Yeah, VA stuff. I liked having you here, Tommy, to talk some VA stuff.
Oh, as somebody who, as somewhat of a hobby, participates in voiceover and ADR, it is something I do like talking about.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyways, guys, I thank everybody for being here tonight, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.